The overtime coin toss. Look at Baker Mayfield here. This is the language of inevitability. KC's overtime win, but only after Tampa decided not to go for two. We'll go down that road. Also, the trade deadline rises. And the first look at the college football playoff. Year 23 of Around the Horn rolls on.
Yeah.
23.
Game within the game. Tampa's last-minute touchdown drive was beautiful. It was clutch, and it got them to 24-23 with 27 seconds left. So it becomes decision time for Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers. Kick to tie and hope to stop Mahomes in that final half a minute and hope to win in overtime, or try to go for two, hope to get it, hope to hold those final 7 seconds and win. Todd Bowles after the game, we wanted to get into overtime with the wet conditions on the field. We thought we had to go into overtime instead of going for two. We had our shots. We lost the game. And the game because the coin toss went KC's way, and after that, it was barely a brisk walk for Mahomes for the overtime win. George Sedano, Around the Horn to you. Did Bowles blow it by not going for two?
Tony, the short answer is yes. I know there's a famous saying that if you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting with them. But you know what? Everybody had this right, including Troy Aikman in real time, was telling people, hey, he needs to go for two here. And look, the rule of thumb is basically under 30 seconds or in that range, you go for two in that scenario, especially when you're going up against the two-time defending champions, a team who's been in those situations so many times, countless times over the last couple of years. They've built this incredible muscle memory in those situations that allows them to be successful over and over and over again. So why not go for the kill there? Defensive coaches, I know there's some exceptions, obviously, like Dan Campbell, for example, but defensive coaches, historically, Tony, are more conservative. And this is an era where you gotta score points. And especially against that team, whenever they get the ball in those moments, they seem to come up big.
Marcel Louis-Jacques, Around the Horn to you.
Tony, I'm still marveling at the fact that Todd Bowles wanted to go to overtime against a Chiefs team that's now won 14 straight games. Like, you wanted to keep playing this team? That blows my mind. But the entire sequence felt so panicky. Baker leads this, 9 plays to get to the 1 yard line, and Bowles immediately calls a timeout. Yeah. So now you're kind of pigeonholed into having to throw the ball, which they did successfully twice. They should have scored on that first down, and they did score on second. So while you've got Baker Mayfield, who maybe is the most momentum-driven quarterback in the NFL, you decide to throw that momentum out the window and kick the ball. It's crazy to me. I don't care what the numbers or the math the computers say. If computers made the right choice every time, then why are coaches on the sideline? Just print out an algorithm and run down the sheet.
You have to be able to use some. But okay.
You have to be able to use some humanity here and use your eyes and say, we have the defending champs on the ropes. Let's go ahead and go for the kill.
I think Bowles was saying he did use his humanity, to use your word, Marcel, when he made his choice. Kevin Blackistone, how do you see it?
Well, you know what quarterback has the best overtime record in the NFL since Patrick Mahomes entered the league? Patrick Mahomes, that's who. So that's the other reason you go for two in that situation. 8-2 in overtime games. And the other thing here is has been said, I mean, you're going against an offensive juggernaut in Kansas City. So you got to score points. That's what this league is all about right now. And I don't think anybody would have questioned Todd Bowles had they gone for two and failed. I think the question this morning is, why didn't you do it?
And Frank Isola.
Well, I think everyone is right, but let's also remember something else, because we've seen Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs do this in a home playoff game against Buffalo where they have no time left, and they still find a way to win the game. So what would have happened if Tampa had gone for it and they converted it? Guess what would have happened? Mahomes would have driven them down the field in field goal position, and Harrison Butker would have made the kick. Even though that would have happened, you still have to go for it. I get it. But let's also remember, what happened in the Super Bowl? When you're going up against the Chiefs, you have to be unconventional. And once San Francisco kicked the field goal to take the lead in overtime, it was bye-bye. That means you're giving that guy 4 downs to get a first down. Right. He's going to drive the team down the field and score, and that's what he did.
Marcel Louis-Jacques back in.
somebody mentioned Baker Mayfield's face saying a lot. His words said even more after the game that you can only give that team so many chances. So Baker knew that the right move was to not give the ball back to the Chiefs. And I think you can live with a game-winning drive. If at least you went for it, if you got those points, you could live with a loss in that matter. But this one it feels scary. It feels panicky.
Question last night, should they have gone for it? The question in the NFL this afternoon, who won the trade deadline? Let's go right in there. So many trades the last 3 of the deadline today. Here's some. Detroit pulling the trigger, as you may have thought, and it's Za'Darius Smith. That was for a 5th-round pick. Washington acquiring cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. That's for a 3rd-round pick. Pittsburgh Steelers getting in on the wide receiver market. So many wide receiver trades this season. Going from the Jets, that's for a 5th-rounder. The Bengals getting some running back help, Khalil Herbert from Chicago. And maybe you consider this a surprise considering how banged up they are. Cowboys buyers trading for a wide receiver, Jonathan Mingo, and that was for a 4th-round pick. The one trade that's got your curiosity, and then your attention around the horn, Marcel Louis-Jacques.
The one that's got my attention, let's start off with the first one of the day, and that's Za'Darius Smith to Detroit. Aiden Hutchinson goes down a couple of games ago. In that time, Detroit's pressure rate is down 4%. Their pass rush win rate is down 14%. They're winning games, but they're clearly struggling in that specific area. But shout out to GM Brad Holmes for saying, I'm not satisfied by just winning games. I want to attack this weakness before it becomes a glaring hole late in the season. Za'Darius Smith, it's been the worst kept secret in the NFL over the past few weeks that he was going to leave Cleveland for a contender, for specifically Detroit. I think, if you manage to stay motivated this season and you can pair him with Aiden Hutchinson moving forward, Detroit should run the NFC North and the NFC overall for years now. The one that's got my curiosity, what the hell are the Cowboys doing trading a 4th-round pick for Mingo? The guy who's 126th out of 126 players in success rate over the past couple of years. This is unreal. They played more for him than they got in return for Amari Cooper. It's just, they never cease to amaze me, the levels of mediocrity that organization can stoop to. Kevin Blackistone.
Well, in Washington, D.C., as inebriated as everyone is with the stardom of Jaden Daniels, there is no question that everyone is sober when you talk about the defensive backfield or this team. And so for this club to go out and get a 4-time Pro Bowl cornerback who can play man and maybe lock somebody down for a team that is ranked in the 20th when it comes to pass defense is absolutely huge. And this is a team that's also had the largest overhaul of its roster in going into this year. So whatever Peters and Dan Quinn are doing with this team to get them to where they are and to be able to recognize what to do, not only in the draft but in free agency, all faith in what these guys have done. They recognize the problem and they plugged it.
Right, guys, Zola.
Yeah, for me, it's Washington and it's Detroit as well. And I think for Detroit, you fill a need by getting a pass rusher, but I also think you're sending a great message to your locker room, to your fan base. We've been around a long time. Forget about winning a Super Bowl. We've never been to a Super Bowl. Your time is now, so you make a bold move like that. And for Washington, Kevin mentioned in the quarterback, that's where it all begins and ends. Everyone talks about rebuilding. And what rebuilding begins with? One player. Getting the right quarterback. Everything about Washington has changed, and they have great belief, and you make a move like that. I love the 2 moves. Defense, remember, January, February, defense still wins.
George Sedano.
Tony, I'm going to stick with the NFC East. I'm going to, for different reasons, obviously. Washington, because as Kevin alluded to earlier, their pass defense is terrible. So bad, by the way, they've given up 14 touchdowns this season. That's 6th worst, tied for 6th worst in the NFL this season. So having Lattimore obviously will help them there. And then for Dallas, I mean, this is Jerry just falling either to public pressure or just self-imposed pressure, because this team is going to miss its quarterback. It's missing a ton of players. This team is going nowhere, and you had a player who's just not that good this season. So I just don't understand why the Cowboys would go in that particular direction, other than maybe Jerry's trying to make up for the comments he made about not, having enough money, I guess, to go for Derrick Henry, and he's trying to just kind of go around the fringes to kind of appease his fan
Marcel,
base.
your face.
His fan base is
at the idea
his fan
here
base is
that
too smart for this.
Jonathan Mingo equals making up for Derrick Henry. Please.
This is crazy. Like, what part of the going all in manual is trading for a flamed out second round pick, a second round receiver? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, but I guess we shouldn't have taken Jerry seriously, considered he was doodling.
Cooper
while
Rush
saying
needed
we're
a
all
weapon
in.
the next 4 weeks. I mean, you're right about it. 4th round pick is what that trade
Maybe
was.
Trey Lance.
Didn't Kansas City just trade a 5th round pick for DeAndre Hopkins? And what does he do in his first game? 2 touchdowns. How did the rest of the league let that happen? Taking a break right here.
I give the quarterback credit for that one, not the receiver.
The first college football playoff preview selection show of the year, T-minus 1 hour and 44 minutes. And our first expansion. So now, where is the drama? Last couple years, when it was 4, you knew you needed to be top 6, maybe 7 to be within striking distance. Now with 12, what's the number? And how the one-lossers are sorted behind Oregon. Is it Ohio State, Georgia, or Georgia, Ohio State? And the 2-lossers like Alabama, and those undies like BYU and Indiana, and Boise also in prime position for a group of 5 spot. George, would you buy, would you sell? We'll learn in this first ranking.
Tony, I'll answer your question. You asked how many and where do you have to be in range? I talked to a former committee member over the weekend, and they believe that this committee has it tougher because they have to look basically at about 18 teams potentially that may be upset with where they're ranked in a particular moment. But I'm curious to see where Miami is, undefeated Miami versus some of these one-loss SEC teams. Same for BYU and Indiana, both undefeated. Where do they rank against some of these one-loss SEC teams?
I'm going to stick with one of those teams George just mentioned, Indiana. I was in Indianapolis a few weeks ago, that same week that they beat the Colonels out of Nebraska, and Curt Cignetti has that region fired up, man. Like, I didn't even know Indiana fans existed in mass like that. The problem is they're undefeated, but they have the 103rd hardest schedule in the nation. They haven't played anybody. They put B to A on every team that they've played, but until they face Ohio State, you just simply don't know how good this Indiana team is.
Kevin Blackstone.
You know what? I'm selling this because I thought that they were going to give us a presumptive list, right? A list that you could say these would be the 12 teams that are in the playoffs.
Are they not doing that?
Am
I confused here?
Well, they're just giving you the top teams all the way down to 25, right?
So the top 12 is the top 12
right.
then, right, Kevin?
Yeah, but no, not necessarily, right? Because you don't know who the conference winners are necessarily going to be. So
the
just
conference
give me some
yes, of course,
asterisks.
right. We don't know the conference
So give me some
champions,
asterisks.
and they're not presuming
and
that. I understand what you're
exactly, and then make everybody nervous about their place on this list. That's what I want. Chaos. You like chaos.
No. I like chaos. I mean, if you're going to tell me you want to see a bracket right now instead of a top 25,
Exactly.
I'd be game.
Thank you very much.
To hear you talk that one out. But the top 12 is the top 12. I mean, Frank, I sell it around the horn to you.
Well, if it's a real tournament, you need an underdog. So I'll look at a team like Indiana, also Boise State. And Heather Dinich and her story, I love what she did pointing out some scenarios with on-campus games. Alabama at Ohio State, Notre Dame at Penn State since we're playing this game. I was at Penn State earlier this season for a game. So now I'm an authority on that team.
Wait, so you're going after Marcel. Marcel, wait a second. You said you were in Indianapolis when Indiana was playing a game, but you were not at the game. I think I'm reading through that.
No, it was not
okay, well, that's what that is. And Frank, if you want to name drop Heather Dinich, then I'll give Heather Dinich the points for her wonderful analysis there. We'll move on. Buy or sell too. Jim Harbaugh wondering why Justin Herbert doesn't get roughing the passer calls from referees this season. Statistically, he hasn't had one called on him yet. Harbaugh said he submitted hits to the league this year. He said, does it sound like I'm complaining? Yeah, maybe. But Herbert's being ref like he's Shaq out there. Buy or sell, public politicking for unnecessary roughness calls, Marcel?
No, okay, so let's say he hasn't been called for one, or he hasn't gotten one this year. He still ranks 9th most since entering the league in 2020 with 13 roughing the passer calls going his way. So no, this isn't a Shaq comparison. There have literally been rules implemented to protect quarterbacks from this rule. No such rule existed for Shaq or any 7 foot, 350 pound guy that I know of. So no, I think he's just kind of creating opposition
George
here,
Sedano,
which
you're
to
shaking
his
your head
credit
no.
is his specialty.
Tone, those numbers from Marcel would be great, except he's talking about this year where he hasn't had one, okay? It's a masterful job by Harbaugh, because he mentioned Shaq. It reminds me of when like Phil Jackson and Pat Riley used to complain after playoff games about Shaq getting hacked. So it is absolutely a brilliant move by Harbaugh.
Frank Isola?
Hang on a second, George. Pat Riley was stating facts. Phil Jackson was the one complaining when it was Nick Foles. But I do agree with you on this. How is the guy? I mean, if you breathe on a quarterback, they call it erupting the passer. I also think the coach had a little message to the offensive line. We need to start protecting this guy a little.
Kevin Black.
And the referees.
Well, what about looking in the mirror? I mean, the sack percentage, Herbert, this year is highest it has been in his league. Maybe you need to adjust your blocking scheme and adjust your offensive playbook
Blaming
to
the
keep him
victim.
out of that situation so you don't have to think about this.
Yeah, there were 6 sacks of Herbert
Blaming
in the
the
first
victim.
half of that win they had last week, and I think that's what he's trying to drill down on. Buy or sell 3, the 2 undefeateds remaining in the Cavaliers to 8-0 after they edged Milwaukee last night. End of this game was great, a duel between and Dame Lillard. And the Thunder snuffing the Magic. This was 102-86. OK's defense on lockdown to get to 7-0. Most noteworthy start of the Undies. Kevin Blackistone, around the horn to you.
Oh, it's got to be the Cavaliers for me. I mean, you just saw it right there. They're scoring points this year. They are only one of 3 teams in top 5 of scoring and in defense this year. And they got Donovan Mitchell. So there you
Frank
go.
Isola.
Yeah, Darius Garland, 39 points last night. The head coach, Kenny Atkinson from Long Island, doing a great job. Their first 8-0 start since 1976. That was 8 years before LeBron was born. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise you. They didn't have a start like this even in the LeBron years. Sedano, to you.
Right.
Tone, this is easy. It's the Thunder. No team in NBA history has won their first 7 games by 10 or more points. They have the largest point differential. And their defense, 95.9 points per game. That's like when Isola used to cover those Riley, Van Gundy, Knicks Heat games back in those days.
Historic start then.
Teeing
Marcel
up on everybody.
No, it's the Thunder, not because just that they're winning, but how they're winning. Not only that, to George's credit, have they won each game by 10 or more points, they've held at least an 18-point lead in all 7 games as well. It's one of, if not the youngest teams in the NBA. Fresh off of a 1 seed last year, I'm seeing them still hungry, still energized, and building off that performance. Give it to OKC.
Sam Presti got to them.
Still hungry, but no dessert for Marcel Louis-Jacques or Frank Isola.
Baker Mayfield.
Sedano, Blackistone, showdown. Next.
Let's go, KB.
Sedano, Blackistone, good-looking showdown. Ball, the much-anticipated debut of Cooper Flagg, the main event in college. 18 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. And his teammate, freshman Con Knipple, went off as well, 22-4-2. Duke rolled Maine. George, which freshman impressed you more?
Oh, Tone, it's got to be Cooper Flagg. He's the main event. He's going to be the #1 pick in the draft. When you talk to NBA scouts, they tell you he might have been able to play in the NBA at the age of 16. And in the USA Select team, he blew everyone away as they were training for the Olympics with the big squad. So to me, it's Cooper Flagg all day, every day, no doubt about it.
Blackstone?
I don't know if it's in my contract at the University of Maryland that I cannot praise anything to do with Duke, but I'm just going to point out that Cooper Flagg's high school teammate, Derek Queen, made his debut last night for the Terps and went for 22 and 20. So that's what jumps out to me, not these 2 Duke
Maryland's
guys. Come on,
freshman.
give Derek Queen some love.
The
Respect
professor
on that name.
ordering off menu at a Dairy Queen. You should play that up, the Blizzard, the Dairy Queen.
That's good.
Let's give Blackistone the point there for off menu. Showdown 2. Wow. John Morant had multiple 360s. I love them all. We've seen it before, but the degree of difficulty to finish with a basket, compare that to the 360 and then the backwards hurdle we saw from Saquon Barkley. KB, which is the more skillful acrobatic?
Well, no question, the more skillful and acrobatic is the reverse hurdle. Never seen that before in the NFL. Never seen that before in college football, high school football. We see hurdles all the time, but going backwards and gaining yards, that's incredible.
Georgie?
Tony, it's got to be John Morant. That second one in particular, he's going off the wrong foot. I don't even know how he held on to the ball and somehow still had enough torque on it and English on it to get it off the backboard and into the bucket. I mean, it was unbelievable.
He's going off the wrong foot, though. But have you ever seen anyone hurdle somebody backwards on a football field?
Backwards.
At a Little League game.
Little League football? Point! Game FaceTime. Kevin Black.
We're 31. We're 31. No one ever chanced that. But that's what the U.S. is in developed nations when it comes to voter participation. We need to be better than that. So thank you to the NBA. No NBA games today. Why? Because they want people to get out and vote. And they're participating in a number of nonpartisan voting operations around the country. Same goes for some football arenas. Those two have been made available for people to vote. Like down in Texas at Jerry Jones World, people can go in and vote. So very good. We all win when we all vote, and we need to do better than we've done in the United States of America.
That's Black. So that's going to do it for us on a 23-and-a-half hour break. We'll see you guys tomorrow.